We're good to go.
Okay, you all ready? Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining me this evening for this Health Ministries presentation. I appreciate members of our church family being here and also my own family and friends. So thanks so much. I'm so excited to talk about the benefits of adopting a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. I want to thank the people who have helped me organize the presentation. They are Barbara, Pastor Jane, Priscilla, and Brian. I also want to thank our son for teaching me how to make PowerPoints and rushing to my rescue every time I had a problem. Thank my daughter for consulting with me many times, and I appreciate my husband Scott being on this journey with me every step of the way. Let's start with a prayer. Dear Lord, we pray for the health and healing of each of us, our families, our church, our community, and our country. We ask that you will help each of us to be stewards of your beautiful earth, that we can serve all people who are in need, and that we can show compassion for all who share this planet with us. Amen. I'm not a doctor or a nurse. I'm a retired kindergarten teacher, but I would like to explain how Scott and I started eating this way. Growing up, we grew up in a typical American family, each of us eating meat, dairy, and eggs, and lots of sweets. We raised our kids trying to feed them healthy meals, but our meals included, again, meat, dairy, and eggs, and lots of desserts. I became a vegetarian about 26 years ago after learning about so much animal cruelty in the factory farms, and Scott gradually joined me. Eventually, we both developed some serious life-threatening health issues. God helped us through this time and led me to do research on what I could do to support our medical treatment, not to replace it, but support it. I learned that a vegan diet could prevent and help treat serious conditions such as cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. I read books and listened to plant-based doctors online. And this took place about 7 years ago that I became convinced that we needed to become vegan. I struggled to learn how to cook. I had no one to guide me. I bought a vegan cookbook and we had a lot of flops, a lot of meals that didn't turn out very good. Then my daughter and I went on a cruise, and it was not a normal cruise. It was called the Holistic Holiday at Sea, and the people were all plant-based people like us, and the meals were all gourmet, and from morning to night we went to classes. The plant-based doctors were on the ship and they spoke, and from morning to night we would hear doctors or nutritionists, chefs cooking plant-based meals and teaching us how to do it, and it was a life-changing experience for both of us. Then the next year in 2017, Scott went with me on this same cruise, and it impressed him so much. It was different from hearing me talk about the things I had learned about food when he heard it from the doctors and heard all the science behind it. He found it really amazing too. We also went to the University of Pittsburgh during summers at the Johnstown campus, and we took courses with classes with plant-based doctors there. And we had an amazing day at Cleveland Clinic. We went to Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, the famous doctor who has reversed heart disease with so many people. And we were in his class. There were people who had health problems there, heart problems, and also doctors from around the world. And there was one from Israel, I remember, who had come there to learn from him about how heart disease can be reversed with even the most critically ill people who have had several bypasses, that have diabetes and so forth. And some of these people were there to talk that day. I also took an online cooking course, not to learn how to cook, but how to teach people to cook plant-based meals through Mark Reinfeld, who is a plant-based chef. And Scott will tell you that I listen to summits online with plant-based doctors all the time. I'm always listening to one or to a plant-based chef. So I keep myself entertained when I'm cooking or something by doing that. The information that I will share with you this evening is from a large group of plant-based doctors, and it's based on science from many scientific studies. We will spend most of the time talking tonight about the health benefits of plant-based eating, but at the end, I will go over the other benefits too. And I'm going to use the words diet and lifestyle a lot. When I use the word diet, I don't mean a short-term change in food to lose weight. I'm referring to a permanent change for continued health benefits and other benefits. And I ask that you save your questions for the end and just jot them down and remember them for the end, and we'll try to answer things. So now we're ready to get started, and we're going to talk about eating plant-based for your health. So we can change it. First, we're going to talk about the standard American diet, which most of us eat and which Scott and I ate for a large part of our life too. We're going to look at that. The initials SAD spell the word sad, and it truly is sad. 62% of the average person's meals are processed, and 25.5% come from the meat, dairy, eggs, and fish groups. So there's only a little bit of the healthiest foods, the fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and whole grains for most Americans. Children often find that ketchup and French fries are their two main vegetables. Many people eat in restaurants and fast food more than they eat at home, and this can be bad. We stop at fast food because we don't have time to cook. We are rushing to meetings and kids' activities, and fast food has become, the way to handle that. So this is another part of our problem. And restaurant meals often have over 2,000 calories in one meal. Next. These occasions on this screen are a part of our culture. We expect certain foods at these times: turkey at Thanksgiving and hot dogs at picnics. This is just the way it is. Memories of our childhood include memories of food. It seems hard to change from the way we're used to. Sugar, salt, and oil are major ingredients in most of our food, and the average American eats about 130 pounds of sugar in 1 year, and we eat more than double the salt that we need. Oil is another problem. All of the nutrition has been stripped from it, so we're left with just fat and lots of calories. Most oils cause inflammation, but olive oil isn't healthy either. It doesn't cause inflammation, but it does cause damage to the endothelium in the thin lining in our arteries. And so that's not so good for us either. Next. We hear a lot about carbohydrates. A lot of diets today are avoiding carbs. They're getting a bad rap. And there's two types of carbs: the simple refined carbs, which are white breads, desserts, pretzels, white pasta, and sugar is often added to some of these foods. These really do deserve the bad rap. They're not good for us. But the complex carbs, which are beans and fruits and vegetables and whole grains, these carbs are very healthy for us, and we should be eating them. Next. So processed foods are another problem. We eat so many processed foods. The center of our grocery stores are filled with processed foods, and they save us time. They certainly make cooking a lot easier. They might include cookies, cakes, cereals, boxed meals, chips, pretzels, breads, and crackers. So what is an unprocessed food? Dr. Michael Greger defines unprocessed as nothing bad added, nothing good taken away. So a processed food has bad things added, like sugar, salt, and oil, but good things are are removed. I remember back in the 1960s, my mother started to work 2 days a week, and she started buying foods like instant mashed potatoes, stovetop filling, and lots of cake mixes. We thought it was great. It was the beginning of Americans eating less healthy food. I just made this little graph to show cereal and to show the difference between processed and unprocessed. Often we can use the words better or worse. One is a little better or a little worse than the next one. And if you start at the top, I'm picking on Honey Nut Cheerios tonight, but any ready-made cereal, and actually Honey Nut Cheerios is better than some of them that have so many dyes and so forth in them. But Honey Nut Cheerios would be a processed cereal. And then you go to instant oatmeal, the little packages, and then minute oatmeal and rolled oats. And as we go down this list, the foods get less processed. And steel cut oats would be less processed. And the best of all, the most unprocessed would be the whole oat grain. And I have not found that in the grocery store. I order it on Amazon. So meat, chicken, and fish. Meat consumption has doubled since World War II. Portion sizes have grown larger. Advertising has taught us that we need meat for protein, but this is not really true. Meat provides protein, but it also contains saturated fat, cholesterol, iron, carnitine, and antibiotics. And both processed and unprocessed meats increase cancer, heart disease, and death. Milk, cheese, yogurt, and ice cream. And this was my downfall. I loved cheese and I loved ice cream. And I thought I couldn't live without it. Dairy gives us saturated fat and cholesterol. Dairy gives us antibiotics, which can make us resistant to them when we really need them. Dairy gives us hormones. There would normally be lots of hormones in milk, but the cows are pregnant while they are giving us this milk. And so we get even extra estrogen from the milk. And advertising is designed to make us think that we need dairy for calcium. Cheese is very addictive, and dairy increases breast, prostate, ovarian cancer, and heart disease. A half a cup of milk 3 times a week increases breast cancer by 30%. And the more milk, the more the risk goes up for both breast cancer and prostate cancer. So what is milk? God gave each mammal mother the perfect milk for her baby. A mother dog produces the perfect milk for her puppy. A human mother produces the perfect milk for her baby. It varies based on the sex of her baby, the age of the baby, and even the time of the day. It's really a miracle. A mother cow produces the perfect milk for her 65-pound calf to help it grow into a 400-pound cow. The calf is taken from the dairy cow so that we can drink the milk. All mammals stop drinking milk when weaned, except for humans. Should we be drinking the growth fluid of a cow, which is meant for a calf? And what about eggs? This slide shows some of the harmful effects of egg consumption. Eggs contain cholesterol and fat and toxins such as PCBs and dioxins. A half an egg a day increases the risk of mouth, colon, bladder, prostate, and breast cancer by 2 to 3 times. Choline in eggs, like carnitine in red meat, is converted into something called TMAO, which is another marker similar to cholesterol that is harmful for us. There's an epidemic of obesity in our country. 70% of Americans suffer from obesity, and it has been a major factor in coronavirus, making coronavirus more deadly to some people. It's also a contributing factor in many chronic diseases. The sad diet is causing this rise in obesity because of meat, dairy, eggs, processed foods, sugar, salt, and oil. When I changed to a plant-based diet, I started eating more food and I lost 20 pounds without trying. Next. Childhood obesity is another problem. The average child eats 20 teaspoons of sugar a day. Obesity puts children at risk for many health problems such as prediabetes, heart disease, and low self-esteem. 23% of 2 to 5-year-olds are overweight, and 10-year-olds already have the beginnings of blocked arteries, which is really sad. So we have an epidemic of chronic diseases, and the standard American diet has a lot to do with that. There's too many things that are bad in our food and too few things that are good. On the bad list, animal protein, cholesterol, saturated fat, antibiotics, processed foods, sugar, salt, oil, and hormones are all causing disease. And then most of our diet lacks fiber, vitamins, antioxidants, and phytochemicals, and also this causes disease also. So we've talked a little bit about the standard American diet, and now I want to just talk about some of the chronic health problems that we as Americans are dealing with. We all know people with these problems. So we're going to start with heart health, and if we change to a plant-based diet, we can help these conditions. With our heart, we can lower cholesterol, lower saturated fat, lower blood pressure, and lower TMAO, which again is a marker like cholesterol that is harmful and causes heart disease and stroke. And people who eat a vegan diet do not form TMAO in their blood. Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, again, the guy that I saw at Cleveland Clinic, says that some people think the whole food plant-based diet is extreme. 500,000 people a year will have their chest opened up and a vein taken from their leg and sewn onto their coronary artery. Some people would call that extreme. He wrote Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, which is a short book that tells you exactly what to do. And he was also in the film Forks Over Knives. Stroke is another problem in our country, and on the map at the top, you can see the dark areas, which are considered to be the stroke belt or stroke part of our country where it's such a problem. Dr. Aisha Shirzai specializes in stroke and dementia at Loma Linda in California. And she says a plant-based diet removes most of the risk factors for stroke. Some of these are high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diets low in fruit and vegetables, diets high in salt, sugar, and saturated fat. So all those factors would be eliminated with a plant-based diet. Other factors are drinking alcohol, smoking, lack of exercise, air pollution, and even our age. And if we're female, we have more of a risk, and ethnic background can be a factor. But so many of the factors can be removed. A plant-based diet also reduces stroke by reducing inflammation, oxidative stress at a cellular level, and regulating glucose metabolism. Diabetes has been such a problem in our country. A diet high in complex carbohydrates and fiber, plant foods, and low in fat is the best prescription for controlling diabetes. The American Journal of Clinical Nutrition says a low-fat vegan diet appeared to improve glycemia and plasma lipids more than the standard diabetes diet that most doctors recommend. And so a diet based on vegetables, legumes, fruits, and whole grains, which is low in fat and sugar, can lower blood sugar levels. Many type 2 diabetics when they go on a plant-based diet can really lower their insulin or actually stop taking insulin. So it's very important if a diabetic decides to try plant-based that they work carefully with their doctors so that their insulin does not, their need and goes down, and they could have a real problem. They need to be carefully monitored when they do that. And it can also help type 1 diabetics, but it's not going to cure type 1. And cancer, here are some cancer facts about how a plant-based diet can lower our risk. Cancer rates are half to 3/4 that of the general population for people eating plant-based. Breast cancer is lower in countries who eat plant-based. Less colon, esophageal, and pancreatic cancer rates in vegans. The plant-based diet is lower in fat and higher in fiber, and plants contain cancer-fighting phytochemicals. Beta-carotene and lycopene reduce lung and prostate cancer. Diets that avoid dairy reduce the risk of prostate, breast, and ovarian cancer. And vegans actually have more killer cells to destroy cancer cells. And there's even a lower risk of blood cancers in the plant-based population. Dr. T. Colin Campbell is a really famous researcher who did studies on cancer. And he found out his first study was with mice, and he was actually had no idea what he was going to find out. He was raised on a dairy farm, and he thought he was doing work to improve production of milk. And that's how he started out. But in a study with mice, he found that animal protein, actually the protein in milk, turned on cancer, and reducing the animal protein stopped the cancer, and he could turn it on and off. But this was with mice. Then he did an enormous study in rural China, and the New York Times said it was the most comprehensive study on diet and disease. He found that in plant-based communities, the cancer rate was much lower, 80 to 90% of the, was that much lower. And in the areas where they ate animal products, the cancer rate was so much higher. He wrote the famous book, The China Study, that you've probably heard of. Alzheimer's has become such a problem. It was non-existent 100 years ago, and now it's the 6th leading cause of death. People eating meat and trans fats have 3 times the risk of Alzheimer's compared to vegetarians. Saturated fat, cholesterol, and cardiovascular disease contribute to Alzheimer's. And there's other factors. Toxins in animal products and in our environment are also contributors. I'd like to recommend a book called The Alzheimer's Solution by Dr. Dean and Aisha Shirzai. They're neurologists at Loma Linda, and they have written a book about preventing Alzheimer's, and it actually can be prevented in almost all people. There's only a small percentage of people that will get it if they follow a plant-based diet and follow other things like good sleep, good exercise, intellectual stimulation, social connections. All these things are factors in preventing it, but they believe it can be prevented, and their book is excellent. Inflammation and autoimmune. Meat and dairy cause inflammation, and inflammation is such a factor in so many conditions, and especially autoimmune conditions. So you can see this list of problems that are affected by inflammation. Dr. Brooke Goldner treats all types of autoimmune conditions with a plant-based lifestyle. She was actually cured of lupus by eating a strict plant-based diet. And it has been years since she was sick with lupus. She was a teenager, and it had crippled her life, and she was on chemo and had so many problems. And now, she has been free of it for years, and she treats people all over the world through virtual appointments, and she also does free online classes for people with autoimmune conditions through her website. And so she is easy to, access her and get help with problems like that. But inflammation is the base of it, and she treats that by removing all animal products. Many other diseases are prevented or improved with a plant-based diet. I'd like to recommend a book, How Not to Die, by Dr. Michael Greger. It sounds like a depressing book, but it's really very hopeful, and it goes into 15 of the leading health problems and how they can be helped with a plant-based diet. I mean, there are some things that it doesn't help, but there are so many that it does help. And there's two parts to the book. The first part is about those diseases, and the second part is about what you should eat, about the good, healthy foods that will protect you from disease. So I recommend that book. Okay. I'd like to mention the microbiome. We hear so much about the importance of that part of us in the last couple of years. Meat eaters have very different bacteria in their gut than plant eaters. It's totally different. Meat encourages leaky gut. And we hear about prebiotics and probiotics. The prebiotics feed the good bacteria. Broccoli, bananas, beans, Jerusalem artichokes, blueberries, polenta, miso, and tempeh are all foods that help to feed our good bacteria. And when we take antibiotics, our good bacteria are harmed and killed. 80% of antibiotics are given to farm animals. So when we eat meat, we are building up a resistance to antibiotics. Our microbiome aids our digestion, prevents constipation, inflammation, mood, nutrient absorption, and our immune system. 70% of our immune system is in our microbiome. So many people ask me, where do you get your protein? And actually 97% of us get plenty of protein. We get too much protein. Only 3% of us, though, get enough fiber. And yet most people don't worry about that. Fiber improves digestion, stabilizes blood sugar, lowers cholesterol, detoxifies toxins, feeds good gut bacteria, scrubs our colon and our arteries, and protects us from constipation. High fiber reduces the risk of cancer of the colon, breast, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, and premature death. Beans are high in fiber. They make us feel full. And meat, dairy, fish, and eggs have no fiber at all. So when you eat them, you're not getting any of the important fiber. It's all in plants. So it's a really good reason to eat plants. Here's Dr. Esselstyn again, and he says, genetics load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And we often think, well, we have the genes for heart disease, or we have the genes for this, we don't have a chance, we're going to get it. But that is not true. If you eat a plant-based diet, it will protect you from getting those diseases that you have those risk factors for. So I've been using the words vegan and I've been using the words plant-based. What's the difference? Both words refer to people who do not eat meat, fish, dairy, or eggs. Vegans could be people that are doing it just for the environment, just for world hunger or for animal cruelty, and not care about health. But, and that's not necessarily the case, but plant-based meat usually eliminates most of the sugar, salt, and oil and processed foods. So plant-based is a healthier version of vegan. A vegan could live on Oreos and potato chips and Beyond Burgers and be vegan because Oreos are vegan. And but a plant-based person would try to eat healthier things. I consider myself both. I consider myself vegan because I don't eat meat and dairy, but I try to be plant-based and be as healthy as I can. Not always perfect, however. And at a restaurant, I would use the word vegan just so the waiter would understand. Um, and even then, sometimes they don't. But that's a better bet. Okay. This is, I think, the most important slide in my presentation, the power of food. And the most important part to understand is that each food is a package. Meat is a package. It gives us protein, but it also gives us some bad things: saturated fat, cholesterol, hormones, and antibiotics. Dairy is another package. A piece of cheese is a package. It gives us calcium, but it gives us saturated fat, cholesterol, hormones, and antibiotics. Plants are a package too. They give us protein and calcium, plus they give us good things: fiber, vitamins, antioxidants, phytochemicals. So the best foods are unprocessed plant foods. These foods have more protective nutrients and they lack disease promoting factors that we get from meat, dairy, and eggs. I just want to mention nutrients for a minute. All foods, animal and plant foods, have macronutrients. They are fats, protein, and carbohydrates. Micronutrients, however, are only found in plant foods. And that's where we get vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and phytochemicals. So there are none of those things in animal products. Macronutrients give us both calories and energy. Micronutrients have no calories, but they lower the risk of disease and they have many healing properties. And the next two slides just show us the foods that a plant-based person would eat. First of all the vegetables in the world we can eat. And the king of vegetables are leafy greens. Kale, spinach, arugula, collard greens, Swiss chard, they're all at the top of the line for health. And then every fruit is good for us. Berries are the top, the queen of the fruits are berries. And they go in order from the top: blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. But they're all wonderful for us. And the more we eat, the better. Here are the other plant-based foods: whole grains like quinoa, millet, oats, and rice, legumes, mushrooms, nuts, and seeds. Now, you probably are thinking that I live on salads all the time, that's the only thing I can eat, but that's not true. We can make amazing meals from these foods that range from pizza to Chinese, from tacos to ice cream. It just won't have the dairy in it. But, our meals are really good, really delicious, and we don't feel that we're missing anything. It's important to add 2 supplements, and really people who eat animal products usually need these 2 same supplements. First of all, it's necessary to take B12 because B12 doesn't come from plants or animals. It comes from bacteria in the dirt. And because we eat in such sanitary ways nowadays, we are not getting that B12 that we need. So it's important to get B12. And usually very young people especially need it, babies, and also older people need more. And the same with vitamin D. Most people need vitamin D, whether you eat animals or not, but it's good to check with your doctor about how much vitamin D to take, and sometimes we need more in the wintertime. They used to say that you needed to combine foods in certain ways to make sure you were getting everything you needed on a plant-based diet, but that is not true at all. It's good to eat a rainbow, and that means to eat foods with lots of color, lots of variety of colors, reds, greens, purples, oranges. And when you put all the colors together, you will be eating a really healthy diet. The brighter the color, the more antioxidants in the food. So where do you get protein? Americans get double the protein that they need. No one has a protein deficiency in our country, or very few. Maybe a homeless person might, but most people have plenty. And the healthiest source of protein comes from whole plants. The World Health Organization recommends that we have only 10% of our calories should be from protein. Animal protein is bad for our bones, creates an inflammatory state in our bodies, and increases the risk of tumor development, raises cholesterol, and is harsh on liver and kidneys. If you eat enough plant foods to maintain your weight, you will get enough protein. You don't have to worry about it at all. So I get my protein from plants, and just like these three big animals at the bottom of the slide, they do not eat animal products, and we all know that they are pretty tough customers. Beans, soy products, whole grains, vegetables, and fruit all contain protein. Plants give us protein plus vitamins, antioxidants, and fiber, and protect us from bad diseases. And again, there's that package that with the plants, we are getting a package that's full of good stuff. This is just a chart to compare a serving of beef to a serving of black beans, 100 grams of each. And black beans, first of all, are about 1/8 the cost of beef. So let's just go down through, and you're going to see that we get the good things from the black beans and we get the bad things from the beef. So number one is protein. We actually get more protein from black beans. We get more fat from beef. We get more fiber from the black beans. We get 0 fiber from the beef. Under cholesterol, we get cholesterol from the beef. We don't get any cholesterol from the black beans. We get more sodium from the beef. We get more calcium from the black beans, and we get more iron. It's going to be in from the beans, and it's going to be in the form of non-heme iron, which if you get too much, it just won't be absorbed. You won't have to worry about getting too much of that kind of iron. So how do you get calcium? Cows get calcium from the plants they eat. We get calcium from plants too. Now, since sometimes cows don't get to go out into the pasture anymore, they have to be given supplements for calcium. Milk has calcium, but it's hard for us to absorb it from dairy. Calcium is a mineral found in the soil, and plants are conduits of it. In a large study, women who drink more milk have more bone and hip fractures, as well as higher rates of death from other diseases. So, I found all of this information just so fascinating because it was so different from what I have learned my whole life and what is on the commercials on television. So what is the best way to get calcium? Europe, the United States, New Zealand, and Australia consume the most dairy, but they also have the highest bone fracture rates. East Asia and Africa consume the least amount of dairy, but have bone fracture rates 50 to 70% lower than the dairy drinkers. If you want strong bones, avoid animal-based proteins. Great sources of calcium are beans, soy, bok choy, broccoli, sweet potatoes, and kale. So the message is eat those greens. They're good for your heart and they're good for the calcium. And you can see this little chart at the bottom, and you can see milk is at the bottom and arugula is at the top, 1,300 milligrams and 100 calories. Now there is one catch, 100 calories of arugula is a lot of arugula. But you can see that milk is not the only source of calcium. So you need protein, but not meat. You need calcium, but not milk. You need omegas, but not fish. You need nutrients, but not the life of an animal, all of which can be found in a plant-based diet. And here we can see these 5 stomachs, and how much 500 calories of each of these foods fill up the stomach. So on the left, we see that oil, which only fills the stomach, 500 calories only fills the stomach a little bit. So you know you're going to eat a lot of other food at the same time as that 500 calories of oil. Cheese fills you up a little bit, but you have room to eat a lot more calories. And then meat, a little bit more. Potatoes, rice, and beans almost fill your stomach with 500 calories. And fruits and vegetables, you are going to be totally filled from 500 calories of fruits and vegetables. Oil, of course, is the most calorie dense and has no nutrition. So now, I'd like to explain why we don't know most of the information that I'm talking about tonight. Why I have lived most of my life without knowing all of this, and probably some of you feel the same way, that, you know, is she making this up? How can this be true? It's not what we've heard. And first of all, I would just like to say that doctors, nurses, and medical workers are dedicated, amazing people who treat chronic disease, and they're treating the coronavirus right now, and they are saving lives. They're working miracles. They are trained to cure sick people. Wouldn't it be wonderful if they could shift to preventing disease by teaching about lifestyle changes instead of treating the conditions that our food choices have caused? And then let's just look at this for a minute. Pharmaceutical companies want people to need their medications and supplements. So they need us to be sick. Hospitals need sick people that need surgeries and procedures. And all these places are businesses as well as helping us. They have to make money. That's true. They have lots of salaries to pay. And so they do need people, and hospitals will serve fast food in their cafeterias. They'll serve unhealthy food as a way to attract people to their hospitals. Diet product companies want people to be overweight so that they buy diet pills and so forth. News media, magazines, television, and radio stations depend on advertisers. And who are those advertisers? Well, they're meat, dairy, eggs, pharmaceutical companies, and processed foods are, some of the leading advertising companies, and they do target children so often. Taxpayer dollars are used to subsidize unhealthy foods instead of healthy foods. And you can see on this chart that meat and dairy gets most of the government food subsidies, and fruits and vegetables hardly get any money. And this affects our school lunches as well as prisons and the military. So it's a shame that school lunches are getting foods that are not the healthiest. And it's so much easier for fast food places to sell unhealthy food. They can do it so much cheaper than they could sell healthy food because of the subsidies. The FDA protects the meat and dairy industry as well as our health. So there is a conflict of interest there, because they are the meat and dairy, they're taking care of them, and they're supposed to take care of us too. And they create the dietary guidelines every 5 years. And sometimes these guidelines are not totally based on the science that they know. Charities, health and environmental charities, receive large donations from big ag and big companies, and this can control the information that we receive from these charities that we support and trust. Most of us endure exorbitant medical and drug costs. $3 trillion a year are spent on healthcare. 75% of the illness could be healed with food instead of medicine. I mean, there's certainly a place for medicine, but we could do it with food. What will the last years of your life be like? What do you want those years to be like? Most Americans will suffer from chronic diseases, take many medications, and be very restricted in their activities. They will often live in a nursing home. This does not have to be our fate. We can remain healthy and active Choose health by choosing plants. Hippocrates, the Greek physician, was born about 460 BC. That's a long time ago. But he was a very wise man. He said, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." Many people think that changing to a whole food, plant-based lifestyle would involve a major sacrifice of all good food. It seems impossible to them. You're probably thinking the same thing right now. How would I ever do this? How do I change everything I know? And it seems impossible. But I feel just the opposite now. I didn't at one point. I thought I couldn't give up dairy, but my meals are filled, and Scott feels the same way. Our meals are filled with so much delicious food and so much variety. We look forward to every meal. It took me about 2 weeks to get over the cheese thing, to give to and ice cream, and I have never missed it, or I just don't miss it. So that's what we want to cover about the benefits for health. But now we're going to take a quick look at the other areas that a plant-based diet will help: the environment, world hunger, animal cruelty, pandemics, and we did do health. So let's talk about the environment first. Over 7 billion people live on our earth. 70 billion farmed animals live on our earth with us. This number of farmed animals is expected to double in the next 30 years because of the demand for meat. All of the animals and the people need to eat. We focus most of our attention on fossil fuels, waste, and all forms of transportation as the leading causes of global warming. Animal agriculture is often not mentioned for several reasons. First of all, it's political suicide for politicians. Meat, dairy, and egg industries fight against the world knowing this part of the picture. Pharmaceutical companies fight it, and television stations and charities receive funding from the meat, dairy, and egg industries so that they don't talk about it either. And I mean, I didn't know this myself until I started doing all this research, and so it was news to me. Animal agriculture, and especially factory farms, are causing harms to every area of our environment. Everything you see on this list is affected by animal agriculture. Here's a quote from the World Watch Institute. "The human appetite for animal flesh is a driving force behind virtually every major category of environmental damage now threatening the human future." So climate change, we hear all the time about our forms of transportation producing 13% of all greenhouse gases. We're talking cars and trucks, airplanes, trains, ships, boats, every type of transportation. But animal agriculture and its byproducts produce 51% of all greenhouse gas emissions. Methane has a global warming potential 86 times that of CO2, and cows produce 150 billion gallons of methane in one day. That's a lot. Okay, next we're going to talk about world hunger and feeding humanity. 1 billion people are hungry. 20 million will die from malnutrition. Philip Wallen is an Australian philanthropist who says, 3 quotes that I wrote down that he said: "Eliminating meat will end starvation forever. If everyone ate a Western diet, we would need 2 planet Earths to feed them. We only have one Earth, and it is dying. The Earth can produce enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed." As Christians, think of the power we could have to improve and eradicate world hunger. We are currently growing enough food to feed 10 billion people, but yet we can't feed the hungry. We have almost 8 billion people on the planet now. The US alone could feed 800 million people with the grain that is fed to livestock. Worldwide, 50% of the grain is fed to livestock. So we are producing more than enough food to feed every person and be able to turn some of our farmland back into forest. But why aren't we feeding everyone? It's because it is being fed to farm animals for meat and dairy. Okay, now we're going to talk about pandemics. That's a word we've all learned the meaning of, unfortunately. The UN says that the two greatest threats to humanity are climate change and the emergence of infectious disease. And we don't want to live through another pandemic, and yet factory farms will be the cause of future pandemics. We don't want to live through another one. There is a very real danger of more pandemics in the future because of factory farms. The World Health Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, and the World Organization of Animal Health all agree that the increasing demand for animal protein is the main reason for the increase in pandemics. There is a profound change in the animal-human relationship that has led to disease. Farming has changed from small operations to enormous intensive farms. Factory farms increase the risk of disease spread from animal to animal and from animal to human. So eating a healthy plant-based diet usually lowers high blood pressure, cholesterol, improves obesity, and reduces or reverses diabetes. These chronic conditions are serious risk factors in surviving this virus, COVID-19. So if we ate plant-based, it could help us to survive it. A plant-based lifestyle is not going to keep us from catching COVID. Mask and social distancing will do that. But what if we have it, we could survive it so much better if we ate this way. And the last topic I'm going to talk about tonight is animal welfare. This is the last benefit of a plant-based diet. I don't think most of us know the extent of the horrible conditions that animals live in. At least 90% of farmed animals are raised on factory farms today. Large corporations own these enormous farms, making it difficult for small farmers to survive. To produce cheaper meat and to make a larger profit, these animals live in inhumane conditions. Most of us would not want to turn our backs on the extreme suffering of the animals and the workers in this industry. Conditions in factory farms are unbelievable. I don't describe the worst of it, but animals and workers breathe strong ammonia, which burns their throats and eyes every day of their lives. Beaks, horns are cut off. They're castrated without any anesthesia. Thousands of animals are so jammed that they can't turn around. They live in urine and feces. Fans blow dust and feces in the air. Rodents, flies, and insects live in the farms. There is often no sunlight. Biosecurity is inadequate. The animals and workers experience high levels of stress and fear. Disease spreads easily as animals can't get away from sick ones. The only escape for them is the slaughterhouse. In the egg industry, hens are slaughtered as soon as their egg production slows. Male chicks are often ground alive to go into pet food. Dairy cows are slaughtered as soon as their milk production slows. Calves are separated from their mothers when 1 or 2 days old, and male calves are either shot as worthless or are fed a diet to keep them anemic. They are kept in tiny crates so they can't exercise, and they are slaughtered for veal. So eating animal products causes harm to the environment, causes starvation for so many people, causes pandemics, causes animal and worker suffering, and causes chronic health conditions and diseases for us. You know, I have talked about the benefits of eating a whole food, plant-based diet, but I haven't been able to, I don't have time tonight to go into things like what do you eat? How do you cook it? How do you grocery shop? What do you buy? How do you eat in a restaurant or deal with family and friends and holidays? How do you do all those things? And I would be happy to talk some other time about, after Christmas perhaps, about how you actually follow a plant-based diet. And on the top of the slide, I had to introduce my new dog, Timmy. He is a rescue dog from Texas. 110 dogs came from Texas on a truck, and we've had him for 2 weeks, and he is the perfect dog for us. He goes out in the garden with me every day, and he nips off kale and spinach and even arugula. And when I have a handful, he jumps up to get it. So we think we got the right dog. But it's been a joy for me to be able to share this information with each of you. And I hope that I've been able to explain the reason for so many people to be choosing this lifestyle. So I want to thank you for listening. And yeah, let me turn to the next one. I did put a list of plant-based doctors on our church website. It's, if you go to serve and then to Earth Care, you're going to find a link to a list of doctors. So if you want to look up their websites, if you want to find a book by them, or learn more about them and more about plant-based, the plant-based lifestyle, you can turn to these doctors and these books. And at the end of the list, it also has several documentaries that I recommend that would be helpful for learning about this. So they will be on our church website, and there's also going to be a link there of the recording of tonight's talk that you could listen again or tell someone about it if they wanted to hear about it. So I do thank everyone for being here, and if anyone has any questions, I'll try to answer them.
So I can stop the recording if people would prefer.
I think that would be a good idea. We'll stop the recording so we don't have to worry about anyone, unless you want this to be your big night. So.